Okay, hello everyone. Thank you for joining this afternoon for this webinar on time smart strategies for adapting the primary curriculum with Clicker. So just before we start, just as a bit of an introduction, my name's Andrew. I'm one of the senior education consultants here at Crick. Used to be a year four teacher a few years ago now, and I'm joined with my colleague Katy this afternoon. Oh, I think you muted Katy. Sorry.
Hi everyone, as Andrew mentioned, my name's Katy and I'm a customer experience consultant at Crick Software. My role is to support our existing customers with using Clicker effectively, and I also help to make the training resources that are available on our website. My background is in primary education, where I taught across Key Stage 1 and Key Stage 2. In this time, I led history, geography and science.
Okay, brilliant. Thanks for that, Katy. So just before we jump into Clicker, so the session is due to last for around 30 minutes, so finishing just close to 4:15 this afternoon. And you will get a recording as well. So if you want to kind of just sit back and take everything in, that's absolutely fine. Don't feel like you need to take too many notes because you will get a recording a couple of days after the webinar. So hopefully maybe tomorrow or Monday. And if you do have any questions, we do have a Q&A section, either on the top or bottom of your screen, where my colleague Joe is with us as well today. He'll be here to answer any questions that you might have. So pop them in there and Joe will hopefully get back to you straight away. And at the end of the webinar as well, if you do want to find more out about Clicker, how it can be used with your school and your learners, you will be able to fill in a survey at the end. And if you want to book in a demonstration with myself or one of my colleagues, one of the other education consultants, we'll be in touch to find a suitable time as well. So actually kind of diving into Clicker then. So we'll start off. So Katy, just coming to you. So obviously going back to when you were thinking about being a teacher, how would you have engaged your learners at the start of a topic or lesson? Maybe it was the start of like the new term, perhaps. So how would you have captured that in the engagement?
So when I started a topic or a unit of work, I would look for resources that not only engaged my pupils with the learning, but also introduced new vocabulary and new learning in an interesting way. Usually this would be a book because my learners loved books. And from my experience, a book is a fantastic way for them to hear the words in context with visual reinforcement. I'm sure lots of teachers will find the same as I did. There are certain topics which I really struggled to find resources for, especially resources which hooked the learner in, built curiosity, but were also accessible for all. So I would often have to spend ages creating my own resources to suit the needs of all the learners. If I did find a book or text, I'd then have to ask myself, is it accessible for all? So is it too challenging? Is it too simplified? And does it contain all of that subject specific vocabulary? One topic I really struggled to find resources for was rocks, soils and fossils when I was teaching my year 3 class.
No, brilliant. Yeah, thanks for that, Katy. I think as teachers, it's always looking at how we can best, provide that information to the class with how many different abilities we have. A class can contain, 30 or more pupils at times, and there's so many different individual abilities that we've got to support on a daily basis. Now, Katy, just how you mentioned there about fossils, rocks, and soils. That's a theme that we'll be going through today. So I've got some resources that I want to show everyone. But looking at providing that information initially, what we have a range of different activities built within Clicker, which we call the Clicker sets. Now, I do have some loaded up at the bottom, as you can see here. These are the ones that I'll be going through. However, just so you're all aware, we do have an area called LearningGrids. Now, LearningGrids is a range of pre-made resources. We've got about three to 4,000 of them across the whole of Clicker, as you can see here. All relating to different areas of the curriculum, and we can edit them as well. But in this area, it's all about differentiated resources that are pre-built, so saving us time as we're introducing those topics. And just so you're all aware as well, Clicker does work on Windows, Mac, iPad, and Chromebook as well, so we can cover a variety of different devices. Now, I have saved some of these from LearningGrid, so it's just a little bit easier for me to show you all today. But just so you're all aware, in LearningGrids, as you can see here, we've got an area for English where we've got literature, we've got an EAL section in there as well, numeracy, number, measurement, and geometry, science we cover. I think we've actually finished the science curriculum now, and we're just adding more to it, which is great. So we've got science here, geography, human physical geography and around the world. And then just finally, we've got history, one of my personal favorites. I did like teaching that in year 4. And then we've got the story corner. As you can see here, we've got traditional stories, fables and myths. And then we've also got a range of reading books focused on high frequency words, which you'll find in like the Planet Wobble, decodable stories as well in there. So full of content. This is included in the clicker package as well. And it is updated every 3 or 4 weeks as well. So it's constantly being added to. So definitely worth keeping an eye out in the Learning Grids section. Now, as I mentioned, I've loaded some of these up. I've saved them just so I don't have to go back into Learning Grids each time I want to show a resource. But the resource I want to start off with, just from what you've said there, Katy, is this book here, which is all about From the Fish to Fossil. So this is one of our clicker books. And what's really good about these books, really fantastic, is we try to make them really visual. So offering lots of picture support in here as well. We don't want to overcomplicate the screen as well. So often it's we try to kind of like simplify it with a picture and then just like a text box with that core information there. So as you can see, we can just click, or if we're on an iPad, we can just tap on the arrow icon here. And that will go through the different stages of the fish to the fossil. As I mentioned, we can edit this as well. So if there are certain words that we want to take out or we want to change them ever so slightly, we can do that by editing the book by clicking on the pencil icon in the top right of the screen. We can also change colors as well. So for example, that gray might be a little bit too dark, but we can change that color to one that might be more appropriate. Now, what's also really good with the books is, of course, we can use these, group work, guided reading. We can put these on the interactive whiteboard and get the whole class involved as well. So looking at that, is this book accessible for all? Well, we can get everyone involved, sharing it on the interactive whiteboard. And perhaps for some of those learners at the back of the class, it might be that they might struggle to read the book. It might be a little bit too small. So what we can do to make sure that all of our books are inclusive is we can get Clicker to read the information out loud for our learners. So for example, if I click on the speaker button here,
soon the skeleton is completely buried under layers and layers of sediment.
There we go. So we can click on that button as many times as we want. And for some of those learners that might struggle with reading, they can listen to that book and still make those notes alongside their peers that might be reading it on the board as well. So we've got the books here. As I mentioned, we can have these on the interactive whiteboard. We can get Clicker to read it back out loud to us as well. And the voice that I've got on there, by the way, that's the voice of Amy. So we do have 4 children's voices that you can choose from. We've got Amy and Alfie, which I often describe as the northern voices. And then we do have the other 2 voices, which are Rosie and Harry. And just so you're all aware, in the options menu, just at the top here, we can speed the voice up and we can slow it down as well. So we can really pinpoint, the speed of the voice for the learner that might be using the clicker books or even the whole class. We might want to slow it down ever so slightly. So that was one of our books, a way of introducing that topic to the whole class, through the clicker book. And just so you're all aware, through Learning Grids, we do have over 600 of these books that are being pre-made. So we have 600 that are made for us. So you're saving all of that time. But you can also make these books from scratch as well if you want to. So looking at making like social stories and fact files, we can make our own book from scratch and add in the picture boxes, the text boxes, and move them around as well if we want to. But looking at starting off that topic, we might want to start off with this clicker book, which is one of 600 that we've got on Learning Grids. So once we've gone through the book initially, let's say on the interactive whiteboard for all, so being really inclusive, it might be now that we need to kind of further develop that vocabulary. So Katy, just coming back to you there. So once we've gone through the clicker book, how can we make sure, or how can we ensure that our learners have understood the vocabulary that we've been kind of coming across in this book, especially something like fossils, when the terminology is quite specific. You won't find these words in any other topic. It's specific to fossils. How would you ensure that people have understood this vocabulary that we're coming across?
What I would have done is, after we've been exposed that vocabulary, as a class, we would identify the subject-specific vocabulary, and then I would explicitly teach any new vocabulary. Like you said, scientific vocabulary can be quite confusing, quite abstract, and it can make it difficult for pupils to fully understand and use. Words that they can use in everyday life now have a new meaning when used in a science context. So as a teacher, I want to make sure that they understand the vocabulary that we're exposing them to. So to identify this new vocabulary, we'd map out on the interactive whiteboard all the new vocabulary, and then we'd look at each word, what it meant, and deepen their understanding. This is going to help them to actively participate in the science learning. So through mind mapping, we're building in that time for whole class discussion, which then leads to shared understanding and a development in their thinking. Then maybe the learners would move on to paired or group work, and pupils have the opportunity to discuss this new vocabulary.
Yeah, so I think we could. I mean, I didn't have Click when I used to teach, but looking at mind mapping, I try to incorporate that into every lesson, not just science. Every lesson. Now, unfortunately, I had to use the flip chart paper and scrap paper. So often at the end of the lesson, you tell them to file it away, and it had a footprint on, or it was soggy because it was next to the water bottle holder. So I really wish I had Clicker at the time when I was teaching year 4. But looking at the like mind mapping, so within Clicker, we have a tool that we call the Clicker board, which is personally my favorite area out of Clicker. If I had to pick one area that was my go-to, I really love our Clicker board. So this is one that I'm kind of like Blue Peter moment I made early, and this is I tried to make one that kind of represented what we might have, you know, on the interactive whiteboard. As you mentioned, Katie, we've got kind of like a picture in the middle, and we can start to map out our ideas as a whole class. So getting everyone involved, whether it's group work or as a whole class, regardless of our ability. So as you can see here, I've got a picture in the middle, and I've just put some kind of phrases and individual words around the outside. Now, it's really easy to use our Clicker boards, which is I'm really proud to say. So because a lot of the time, you know, if you overcomplicate something, learners will just completely shut down from using it, and obviously that's not beneficial for anyone. So in terms of adding words in, so for example, if I wanted to add the word pressure, all I have to do is just double click on the box and then just type the word in. That's it. So we try to make it really simple from an implementation side of things as well. So not only can pupils use it, but from a training perspective, teachers understand how it works. And of course, teaching assistants supporting learners on a one-to-one basis throughout the whole day. It's easy for you to use as well, because of course, sometimes as teacher assistants, you will just have to change that activity really drastically because that learner you're supporting is just struggling a little bit. So we need to adapt kind of on the fly. So we can just double click to type in the words there, or we can, of course, copy and paste words as well. So hopefully this works here. There we go. And then, of course, if we've got any keywords like paleontologist, which is quite a complex word there, we can also paste that in as well, as you can see. So we try to make our clickables really simple. We can still insert the pictures for that visual element. Now, these pictures, this one here, this is one that I pulled from one of our Clicker sets that we saw in the book. But you can drop and drag from Google Images. You can insert pictures that you've just saved locally onto your laptop or into like the iPad. And you can also, we do have a folder of images called Crick Pix 2, which is, I believe, 5,000 to 6,000 image-based pictures, like clip art style images, and we can use those as well. So we've got like animals, volcanoes, natural disasters, classroom objects, so we can use those as well. Now, of course, once we've gone through the Clicker board, this is just a one-page one here. If we wanted to, we can add multiple different tabs on the right-hand side here. So if we click on the plus icon, it will prompt us to select a layout. We can select that layout and then continue that mind mapping for the class. So we don't have to just focus on just one of the boards. We can make these as detailed as we want as we're going through modeling for the whole class. As you mentioned, Katie, developing those ideas further. So I do really like the Clicker board. I think it's really simple to use. We can get the whole class involved. And all of these resources, by the way, forgot to mention, we can also print these out on paper. So if we wanted to, even the Clicker books, we can print the books out on paper because it might be that some learners prefer to kind of like turn the page. Same with the Clicker boards. It might be that, as I had earlier, as a teacher, we might want to fill some of these in ourselves, leave a couple of them blank, print them out, and then give them out to the class. So I know that's something that I get asked quite often about, you know, still focusing on handwriting. Well, that's something that we can do within Clicker. We can print the resources off and then we can fill in the boxes with the pencil or the pen and then stick it in our books afterwards. So we can print all of these off on paper if we want to as well. But so far, kind of looking at that, the learning stages within the lesson. So far we have used the reading book, our Clicker book, to introduce the topic, look at some of that early vocabulary that will be coming across when we start writing. And then, of course, we've introduced the clicker board as a way to develop that vocabulary further and just develop some ideas, kind of mapping it out based on the images that we're providing. So Kate, just coming back to you then. So once we've gone through these two stages, how can we make sure that the pupils can kind of retrieve the vocabulary and use this within the context of their writing and develop that vocabulary further?
So I would get my learners to practice this new vocabulary by verbalizing, so capitalizing on that power of dialogue. And as teachers, we know that repetition and reinforcement is vital to ensure retention of new information. And we want them to be able to retain and use this learning. So I would provide them with regular opportunities to rehearse and reflect on what they've learned. Firstly, this is great for me as a teacher because I can hear what the learners understood without that barrier of writing. And in my experience, I taught so many learners who were knowledgeable, they had great understanding, but they really struggled to get it down on paper. What's great, especially in subjects such as science, is I could hear and address any misconceptions that arose, which would then support me when monitoring their learning, but also to inform future planning. Secondly, by practicing using the vocabulary and recording their ideas, pupils were being able to integrate their new learning with their current knowledge and reorganize their thoughts. So they had a verbal plan for when we did want to do writing that was going to follow this.
Yeah, I think just from what you said there, I remember having when I was teaching year four, I had one boy in my class that he could talk for hours. If I didn't stop him, he'd be talking for about 4 hours about history, science, anything. He loved like almost every topic, but he was severely dyslexic, and unfortunately, in the school I was at the time, a lot of our evidence and assessment was kind of like written based. So unless you had produced a sentence, we kind of didn't really have a foolproof way of actually kind of assessing that knowledge and understanding. So I feel like that, thinking back, that boy in my class kind of got kind of left out in a way. But from what you said about kind of verbal understanding and kind of that reinforcement and repetition, that's something that we could potentially use what we call a clicker talk set for. So the clicker talk set, it's all about kind of taking a step back from writing, like you said, Katy, and just verbalizing the knowledge that we either have already or what we want to know in the future. So as you can see here, we've got this one here called From a Fish to Fossil, and we've got that great visual support, and that's really important as well. So all of the pictures throughout this whole topic, they're all the same. So rather than having different pictures and it getting a little bit confusing for some learners, all of the pictures are the exact same from the different stages, so they can so it's just a little bit easier to remember and to rehearse the new knowledge. So in terms of this, or going through each stage, what we can do is we can click on the picture, and now we can go in the order if we want to, or we can just click on any of the picture. It doesn't matter. We can go in the order, or we can pick and choose what picture we want to select. But essentially what we've got now, so it's like a full screen application, which is really nice on the iPads as well, because they're already quite small. So with the clicker talk sets, it's full screen application now. Now, at the bottom here, we've got this microphone button. Now, we typically call these like a voice note, and it's like an MP3 file. So for those learners that Katy, you mentioned, and that boy in my class in year 4, what I could have done is I could have said, okay, I know you know lots about fossils and how they're formed and what happens, when they're dug up and and they're put in a museum. But I want you to just talk to me now, just for a minute long. So each of these lasts for a minute long. So I can click on the microphone here. I can then hit the record button, and now I can just talk about whatever I know, or what I might have been learning in the lesson. So I think talk sets are great from two perspectives. And let me just click stop there. So I think they're great for like we've looked at, Katy, today. You're following on, so you've got the books, the clicker boards, and then having a talk set to rehearse vocabulary. I think they're also really good as well to use at the end of the lesson as well to consolidate learning. There are often times when, because my lessons used to be 50 minutes, and there were often times when there was just too much in the lesson for me to cover. It was just so intense. Now, at the end of the 50 minutes, the bell would ring, and it was just almost chaotic trying to move on to the next lesson in a way. So what I wish I'd have done, even just for 1 or 2 minutes, just, letting everyone finish off the sentence. We've got 2 minutes. Okay, everyone, look at the board here. I'm going to go around the class in the different groups, and I want everyone from each group to just tell me one fact or one new thing that you've learned about fossils. So at the end of the lesson, have that kind of consolidation stage where we can talk as a group, then the bell goes, and then we can move on to the geography lesson. So I think the talk sets are great from kind of both perspectives, developing vocabulary, like you mentioned, Katy, but also at the end of the lesson as well. And once we've recorded that voice note, we can click done, and whatever that pupil has recorded is stored permanently at the bottom of this activity. Now, we can save these activities in a number of different ways. We can save them onto the school network. We can save them onto like cloud storage, so like Dropbox and OneDrive. So we can save them permanently. And then when we come to mark the work, or when we come to kind of evidence the work, we can refer that we've saved this activity in a folder on the network. And that's what that learner has done at that moment in time. So, yeah, in terms of assessment, it's just great for those learners that have lots of barriers to the writing. And just so you're all aware as well, the microphones at the bottom, the voice notes, this activity here has 1 per picture. But if you edit the activity, you can have up to 6 per picture. So you can use it on the interactive whiteboard for a whole group or a whole class by including some additional microphone voice notes at the bottom as well. So that was the Clicker Talk activity. I think we have about 400 of these on LearningGrids, actually, probably over 400. So like I said, this is just one of 400 that we do have available. So far, kind of like summarizing what we've gone through so far, we've introduced the book and that information at the start of the term for the new topic. We've then consolidated our understanding of the key terms using the clicker board. And then before we move on to the writing, we've just kind of consolidating learning a little bit further by introducing a clicker talk activity just to get our ideas out there verbally for some of our learners or maybe the whole class. So, Katy, we're now, after going through these 3 stages, we're now at kind of the writing stage or very quickly approaching it. So in your teaching experience, how would you have got your pupils to produce writing, but in a supportive kind of classroom environment?
Well, I would have spent, first of all, ages trying to think and find resources that are going to suit those varying abilities within my classroom. So this would often mean I'm going to create multiple resources, each with varying support structures. And that's why I love what you've gone through so far, Andrew, with starting with the book. And then there's loads and loads of resources that are related, that are ready to use. So it's great time-saving resources, and which, like you said, you can edit and adapt. So you're not starting from scratch. We've got that basis to go off. As in many classrooms, I had such a broad range of learners, from those who could write independently to those who just struggled to form letters. The end piece of writing would vary depending on the needs of the learner, and we want to create an inclusive classroom where everyone can achieve, but this can mean for teachers, we spend loads of time creating resources trying to suit all of those abilities.
Yeah, I think I used to see 1 and 2 o'clock in the morning far too many times. I think when I was teaching, just making like grids and printing them off and copy and pasting stuff from like BBC Bite Size. It takes up so much time. If you think for a 50-minute lesson, you could probably plan for 3 hours. It should kind of be the opposite way in a lot of cases. But yeah, I mean, looking at supporting writing through Clicker, what we'll come on to next is what we call them the writing grids. That's kind of the term that we use now. In Clicker, we have 3 writing grids. We have one which is called a sentence set, and we'll come on to them in a second. I've got them loaded up at the bottom. But the sentence sets are all about breaking sentences down into individual words or phrases. And the aim for that learner is to just put that sentence back together, hopefully in the correct order. So let's deconstruct it and then reconstruct it. Let's put it back together again. We then have what we call a connect set, which is a really nice kind of like middle ground activity for those learners that are moving from structured sentence support to independent writing, and really bridging that gap between the two, where they might be, they're not fully confident yet to write sentences using the keyboard, but they can construct a simple sentence. So that kind of middle ground. So we've got something that we call a connect set. And then finally, for those learners that construct sentences, they can put a sentence together. We have something that we call a word bank, where we can just have keywords at the bottom of the screen, and our learners can just pop in and out of those words, almost like a dictionary in a way of just some key terminology. So looking at the first one that I just mentioned, which is what we call a sentence set. If I just bring this up here so it's a little bit bigger for everyone. As you can see, first of all, we've got the same pictures that we've been seeing throughout the books, the boards, and the talk set. So the same pictures. Now, as you can see here, this is quite a complex sentence, actually. This is probably one of the more complex ones that we've got available in LearningGrids. But as you can see here, we've just got to put that sentence back together, hopefully in the correct order. Now, for one that's a little bit more complex like this might be a little bit too challenging for a learner just to see this sentence and go, I know exactly what that is meant to say. So in a lot of our resources on LearningGrids, we have a variety of different sentence support. Now, the one that we've got on here, this is called View and Remember. View and Remember. So a View and Remember, it like pops the sentence up for us. We can click on this sentence and it will read it back to us out loud.
A fish dies and sinks to the bottom of the sea.
But what's key now is we can't click on any of the options at the bottom until we've retained that information. So we listen to it back in one of the voices within Clicker, we retain the information. So a fish dies and sinks to the bottom of the sea. And then what we can do now at the sentence, at the document above, so a fish dies and sinks to the bottom of the sea. Now, what we can do as well, if we are struggling to read any of these words, for example, bottom or sinks, you can just right click. So if we right click on this word,
sinks.
So as we've been going through, like looking at that key vocabulary, we can just double check, is that the correct word within the sentence? And then what's really nice is now is once we finish that sentence, as a way to kind of teach that punctuation at the end of the sentence, if we put a full stop in,
a fish dies and sinks to the bottom of the sea,
it will read it back to us. So it's great for proofreading as well. So we can proofread that sentence. Is that correct? Does it sound right? Yes, it does. We can now move on to the next sentence by just simply clicking on that arrow, just as you can see there. So going through the same route, so it doesn't change drastically each time. But as you can see there, going through the different stages of a fish to a fossil, like relating back to the book, it will take the sentences from the book. So yeah, just a way for some of our learners to put that sentence back together. You'll still be included in that learning with the peers, but at a level that's appropriate to their learning styles at the moment. So we've got those sentence sets there. And just so you're aware, we can print these off. So as you can see here, we can print them off on paper, which is really nice for like a cut out and stick activity as well. So I do really like that. So cutting them out, sticking them in their books, that's another nice approach there to use the sentence sets. Looking at the second activity that I mentioned, we have what we call a connect set. So as you can see with the connect set, multiple choices. So it's a far more open-ended activity now compared to a sentence set where we can construct multiple sentences from just one grid. Of course, some of these might be right, some might be wrong, but it's just giving pupils kind of an open-ended scaffolded writing support that we can use, especially if we're kind of progressing from a sentence set and we want to use something before we start that independent writing. So as you can see, we've got 4 grids here, and each grid we can put together multiple sentences from the options that we've provided. We can change these. So as I mentioned before, we can edit these as well. We can change the words. We can change the colors as well. Colorful semantics, for example. So we can change the colors as well. So if we wanted to. So we've got the connect set there. And then, of course, we've got what we call a word bank. So with the word banks here, this is almost like having a dictionary at the bottom of the screen. So as we're talking about the burial, we can go through here and we can say, layers of soil fall deeper. So as you can see, we can start to construct those sentences. We're writing on the keyboard, but there might be some individual words that we want to pop into here just to help us with our writing. So for example, if we wanted to listen to any of these words as well, we can just right click. So sediment, and then we can insert that into there as well. Now, of course, at the end of that piece of work, just like a Blue Peter moment here, this is something that we might come across. So after using kind of all of these grids, we might come to a piece of work that looks something like this. So we've produced that full paragraph, we've used sentence sets, we've used the connect sets, and then we've used the word bank. So I just wanted to show that word bank there that we've got. Yeah.
So Andrew, it's great that the learner's written this all independently, but I'm looking at this from a teacher's perspective. And from this writing, I can't tell if they've used the spell check for like every single word. Have they literally got every single word from the word bank? Is there anything in Clicker that can give me just a bit more information on how they created that writing?
Yes, there is. Yes. So within Clicker, this is a fantastic tool. It came out with the latest version of Clicker 8. But what we've got is it's a tool called Analytics. So, of course, when we've got 30 pupils in the class, it's really difficult to go around each pupil's piece of work to see exactly what they've been producing. I know we always say teachers have got eyes in the back of the head, but of course, unfortunately, we don't, of course. So sometimes, we just have to assess work based on what we can see on the screen. However, at the top of the page here, if you click on analytics, that will break down the whole document of Clicker and tell us exactly where has the work come from, what is being used, how much of the different tools is being used. So as you can see here, we get a really nice kind of like pie chart, and we can go through here. So we've got 15 words that were produced on the keyboard. So looking at areas that we can really kind of celebrate with that learner. We've not looked at the predictor, but we do have a predictive text tool. So as you can see here, we've used the predictor, and then we can also see the words that we've chosen, and if we've had to listen to those words out loud. We can see here as well which different clicker sets. So of course, we've used sentence sets, connect sets, and word banks. As you can see, we can see how much of the clicker sets we've been using as well. So do we need to add more support? Do we need to reduce the support? Or is it at the right level for that learner at the moment? And then just finishing off, we can also spell check the document as well and see the original spelling, which is really important. And if we did, we can also keep track of copy and pasted text, maybe off BBC Bite Size. So yeah, we do have that analytics tool that we can go into. And Katy, because I'm just coming back to you because I know you asked me that question. How would you have used kind of this analytics within the classroom there?
Oh, well, that would have been great because, like you said, with the keyboard, I could see which words they've entered. So what are they secure with? In terms of the predictor and the spell check, I can identify spelling rules or patterns that are not yet embedded. And then that could maybe be part of the next lesson or an intervention. And also which key vocabulary do they still need support with? And I love that you can see what clicker sets they've used, because this can then enable you to tailor support. So like you said, did they use that resource effectively? Do they need more support in place, or can I remove some of that support, like, can they become more independent? So that's a really fantastic tool.
Yeah, so it's just that, like what we've looked at today. I know we've just come to the end now, but just looking at those stages, how can we use Clicker to kind of go through each stage of writing in an appropriate way that's not overwhelming for our learners, but also to looking at that inclusive classroom, that Clicker is not just a tool, for one or two pupils. It can be used by everyone. Looking at the word banks and the connect sets, and even the Clicker boards. We can use Clicker boards for any learner. So I know we've covered an awful lot today. So like I mentioned at the start, the session has been recorded, and you will all get a recording in the next couple of days. So do feel free to share that with any teacher or colleague that wasn't able to make the session. I know we will have lots of different schools here today. Some of you will have Clicker already. But some of you won't have Clicker, and it might be that throughout the session, there are some areas that you think, oh, that might be absolutely perfect for that learner in year 2 or year 5 or year 6. So what I'll say is when we close the meeting, just in a couple of seconds, there will be a survey to fill out. So if you could all fill that survey out, that would be great. And one of the questions as well is to request a Clicker demo. It's a 30-minute online meeting through Microsoft Teams with myself or one of my colleagues. So if you do really see how Clicker can be used in your school and you've got some pupils in mind, please fill out that form in, and we will be in touch hopefully tomorrow with the booking form, so you can book in that meeting to learn more about how Clicker can be used for your learners in particular. But just want to thank everyone for joining the webinar this afternoon. Thank you for everyone for your time. Hope you found it useful as well, looking at kind of the time smart strategies for adapting the curriculum with Clicker. And any questions, let us know. And like I said, if you want to book in that demonstration, fill in the survey at the end, and we can get that sent across to you as soon as possible. But thank you everyone, and I hope you all have a great rest of your afternoon. So thank you.
Thank
Cheers.
you. Bye.
Bye.